I'm really excited today to tell you about the latest book I got in my bookish box, which is The Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. I was really excited to see her name crop back up because her Red Crown series, which I think is just over my shoulder here, was the first book series that I got back into when I got back into reading. So I'm excited to see perhaps how she's grown or what she's been cooking up in between her finishing that and now. But before I get any further into my thoughts or my review, I want to give you just a simple summary of what this book's about so you can decide if you think it might be for you or not. So I think the best way to describe this book is, first off, it's a high fantasy, long trek adventure. Our band of unlikely heroes have to cross various kingdoms to get where they need to go. And it seems as though, even at the end of this big book, their travels aren't done yet. So since their journey takes them very far and wide and they see a lot of different things, I think the best way to describe the book would be to describe the cast of characters. So the first one to make an appearance in the book is a squire for a night of so-so dispute. And the book starts with a bloody battle where our squire is there kind of observing it all and being quite horrified. Two, though, in the battle is this immortal creature who would perhaps be the easiest to explain by equating him to a fae. These creatures that they call the elders are very long-lived, very hard to kill, heal quickly, but these creatures come from another place, and in this book they're very eager to go back, but something's stopping them. So he's our second character that we meet. The third, I would say, is probably the main focus of the book. She's the daughter of a kind of shady merchant, pirate, and it's her blood that is going to help save the world. I kind of feel like those three characters are the main focus of the book, so I'll just quickly list some of the interesting folks that we meet along the way, and may or may not join the merry band. We have an assassin, we have a queen, we have a witch, we have a master document forger, and we have a bounty hunter. And I think that's the best spoiler-free way to sum up the exciting adventures that take place in this book. I think this book would be really well suited for somebody looking to get into high fantasy with multiple perspectives, because even though I listed a pretty long list of characters there, not all of them have their own sections of narration, but there are at least 5. But in the hopes of keeping anybody from being confused, each chapter starts with the name of the character that we'll be following. So I feel like that then skews things a little bit, so I would say that it falls somewhere between easy and intermediate. A lot of the books that I've been drawn to recently are very squarely young adult, not new adult or leaning further that way. And so again, there's not really a lot of maturity or deep morality examined in the book. As with a lot of adventures to save a kingdom, there's giving up something of yourself and what you would want or rather do instead for the good of the kingdom. This is most clearly seen with the assassin, who is only used to doing jobs that she gets paid for. And so quite frequently throughout the book, she mentions she's only doing this for the money, and if there's no money, she's not going to help. But there comes a point where it's not easy to promise her more money or success, or even that they'll make it through this alive. And so she then has to make the decision, is this worth it? Is this worth putting in all that time and effort that I would usually get paid for and using my skills that way? Is it worth it, though, to aid in this cause so that, the world doesn't fall apart? I'd say, too, peppered in a little bit is a sense of, belonging and wanting to try new things and feeling restless, but neither of these topics really go into anything too deep. I would say the level to it that this book gets into is palatable for all audiences. So the romance in here was super palatable for me. There was next to none. In what I feel like is kind of typical of a trek-worthy quest in a high fantasy world, there really isn't time. There's dealing with being on the road and sometimes being a little smelly and dealing with people trying to kill you at every corner. And not to mention, with this being the first book, 1, we have to have the world explained to us. 2, all these characters have to find each other and decide to journey together. With all the plot events that unfold in this book and just the logistics of keeping everybody together and getting them from point A to point B, there's not really any time for romance. So nothing intimate happens in here. Any romantic component is easily digestible for all audiences. So unfortunately, this book does get pretty violent. I have kind of started to notice that it seems like a book can be tame in all other aspects, but still have some really bloody stuff. So maybe other people just aren't as concerned about it, and it's not that troublesome. I've also found, though, that I guess I would count myself among them. I would rather not have a sexually intimate moment, but I'm okay with reading about somebody being killed, which, say what you will about that. Anyway, I would say though that even taking that into consideration and allowing for more to happen before saying it's like inappropriate or intermediate or anything like that, the tough part is that the book starts with a very, very bloody battle. I feel like it doesn't give away any more than the book jacket gives away to say that we see a group of people who think they're prepared for what they're expecting is going to be an easy fight. It's 2 people against them, lots of the strongest warriors of the realm, and at least 10 of them, and it doesn't go as expected. And it gets really bloody and very uncomfortable. And I think it makes it especially more disturbing that that's the first part that you read in the book. Like, for a second, not for long, and I got over it pretty fast, but for a second I thought about just putting the book down. If that's the note it opens on, then things will probably get to that level again later, at the very least with like the final battle for the fate of the realm. And I don't know that I want that. That battlefield is really bloody, but the rest of the book is a little bit more tame, but we are following like an assassin. So I would just say, keep that in mind. I know violence isn't quite as heavy of an element as some of the other things, but I think that should still be part of the score and worth talking about. So here it is. I really, really enjoyed this book. I don't know what it is about Aveyard's writing, but she hits just that right note for me, that it is plain enough that I'm like, God, all this flowery language, but also in a way that's colorful enough that I feel like I can really see where they're at. I can see the ships at port. I can see the blood on the battlefield. I can see the horses driving across the sands. And so I really like her writing style. Too, this is my favorite kind of story. I love high fantasy. I love a big, long, questing adventure. I love playing D&D, and I love seeing how you can kind of turn like an episodic story into a larger overarching plot. I guess I just love stories, because isn't that every story to some degree? You have smaller instances and kind of scenes that happen, and then you paint the whole thing together, and you can tell a tale. So it's one of my favorite things, and I was reminded of Lord of the Rings, which I love a lot. I was also reminded of Octopath Traveler. I don't know how much that game is stuck in anybody's minds, but I know it was really popular when it came out. It's by Square Enix, who does Final Fantasy. I really enjoyed playing it. You're given the choice of picking any one of 8 characters. In that game, you start with your one person, and you slowly move around the map, and in each kind of town area, I forget how they break it up, but you gain a new partner. And then each of the characters has a story. You have your story that you're following, but you also have a story for them that you're following. And that's kind of what this book struck me as, is that they're slowly gathering up each other. So it's not Lord of the Rings style with one person going, here's the band you're going to be traveling with for the next however long until you defeat the evil bad guy. They kind of go around picking them up as they go. So I like that. And I'm also a big fan of putting together maybe unlikely allies and seeing the friendships that blossom and kind of how people can help out here and there and make people better-rounded individuals. Another thing I enjoyed about the book, I don't want to say too much on it because I don't want to spoil it, so I apologize for being vague, but there was a surprise in the book. It wasn't one I saw coming from a mile away. This new turn did not cross my mind until our characters were about to figure it out. And I think that on its part was good writing from Aveyard, but I think another side of that coin that I also appreciated is the characters find out very shortly after. There was a thing that was said and I was like, oh my gosh, wait, and then that would line up with this and I think I've got it. And then probably no more than 2 pages later, actually I think later that page, one of the characters is like, wait a minute, I suspect something is like wrong here. And then like in the next 2 pages, we find out, yep, we were all right. You as the reader, if you guessed that when we gave you the opportunity, but also the character who just said that and had that suspicion. You're proven right, and we can move on. There is nothing I detest more than being hinted at so heavily that you know a twist is coming so far off in the book. It just makes me so mad. That's why I'm so resistant to Sarah J. Maas, is because when I read Throne of Glass, I could see the twist coming from like the end of like the 2nd chapter. And I was like, well, maybe I won't. Okay, like I am over halfway through the book and this topic has still been hinted on, but we haven't learned anything yet. Maybe she's gonna like twist it the other route, because I could see where, with what she's been saying, she could be setting up these expectations, but where it would also fit for the second thing. And maybe that was part of the reason too, that I came up with what I thought was even more clever and exciting and more like nuanced and different and hadn't really been done before. But no, she went with the obvious one, the first one that I thought of, and like at the end of the book. So I read the whole book knowing what the reveal would be, just to be surprised at the reveal at the end. And I'm really glad this book hasn't done that yet. They could have done that with the surprise in the middle. Who knows what Aveyard might unveil later, but I don't really think that that's going to happen. I don't really have any strong suspicions one way or the other about what's going to happen next, so I really don't think I'm going to be disappointed. But she's written the book on quite a cliffhanger, so there must be a second one. I'm really excited to pick that up whenever the time comes. So that was my review on Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. Kind of in summation, I think that this book is a good read. I think that most of the elements are palatable for all audiences. The only thing that I found problematic is the very bloody battle at the beginning of the book. The blood does kind of calm down after that, but it definitely doesn't go away. And the battle is not over. There's definitely going to be a second book. So just keep that in mind if you're deciding to pick it up for yourself or recommend it to somebody. But I definitely think it's worth the read if you don't mind reading about a bit of blood. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. I hope that you had a good time, and I hope I get to see you in the next one. Bye for now.